Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Hi, ladies. So today I have something a little bit different for you that I wanted to share. So you know that originally my flagship book was called Choose Bliss. And for a long time, I talked a lot about that and I traveled around the country and whatever. And then I moved into Blissful Investor, started this podcast and all of that stuff. And during this time that I've been so focused on Blissful Investor, I haven't been asked to talk about Choose Bliss very often. Now, a couple of times I've been on television during the pandemic talking about Choose Bliss, but you know, when you're on TV, it's like a 3-minute spot or a 5-minute spot or 7 or 10 minute, it's a very short period of time and they're usually asking questions. But I was recently asked to do a full-on 30-minute talk on Choose Bliss. And I have to confess, I was a little bit wary because I haven't been talking about it for a long time. And to be very honest, I personally have changed quite a bit since I wrote that book. That book was a beginning for me. It felt channeled. There's so much about it that I learn from as I read it, right? Because I don't remember everything. I'm still me, but the book inspires me sometimes, often. And so I have evolved and changed. And so when I got asked to talk about it, I thought, I just can't pull up one of my old talks that I used to do. I needed to create something different. And so I did that. And I did my very first talk about Choose Bliss since the pandemic. And it was so much fun. I did something completely different. It's very interactive. And I had so much fun presenting it. It was delightful for me. So I thought that you ladies might appreciate hearing from it. And I'm hoping that you will benefit from it. And I would love, of course, to hear your feedback on it because it's the new format that I'm looking at doing for my Choose Bliss talks. And so if any of you have any advice, I'm always open. Or if you feel that it's really valuable, I would love to hear that too. Anyway, so I wanted to share that with you. The recording has been edited a little bit. So all of the exercises, they took out the weights, right? Like I say, I'm going to be quiet now for a minute or 2 minutes or whatever and let you do this. So when you hear that in the recording, please stop the recording and do the exercise because nothing changes until we take action, right? So just hearing it is not going to be as impactful as doing it. So anyways, I hope you enjoy this. And I also hope you have an amazing week and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Moneeka Sawyer has often been described as one of the most joyful people you will ever meet. I can attest to that. For over a decade, she has been helping successful professionals, executives, and entrepreneurs ease anxiety, overwhelm, and stress so that they can experience more joy, ease, and success in all areas of their lives. She is the author of the international best-selling book, Choose Bliss, The Power and Practice of Joy and Contentment, which is recently honored by the very prestigious Quill Award for Best Literary Work from the Governor of the State of Maryland and several other awards. Moneeka, known as the Blissful Millionaire, is a TEDx speaker, hosts the highly acclaimed podcast and nationally syndicated radio show, Real Estate Investing for Women, and she has been featured on stages with Suzanne Summers, Martha Stewart, Ice-T, and Coco at places like NASDAQ, Harvard, Carnegie Hall, and on TV, NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox, reaching over 150 million people. And I have to say, she also was interviewed by my hero, Hal Elrod of the Miracle Morning community on his podcast. So that was huge because I've never met anybody who's actually been on his show. So with that, I just want to introduce you all officially to Moneeka. Moneeka, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we look forward to learning from you and smiling by the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm so honored to be spending this time with everybody. And I have to just say, Anastasia, I was here a couple of weeks ago and Anastasia mentioned what it is she took from my Hal Elrod show. And it really warms my heart when people actually integrate what I talk about. Because sometimes, as a speaker, many of you are speakers, you're kind of talking out in the ethers. You don't know what happens, right? So thank you, Anastasia. I've been smiling ever since because of that. So thanks. And nice to meet everybody. What a wonderful conversation this morning. I love that everybody does introductions, so I get to know all of you. And before we start, I'd like all of us to just ground for a minute. So would you guys join me, please? And just let's take a couple of deep breaths in and just push that breath down into the ground so we can all be really, really present. So let's do that together. Thank you for joining me in that. I like to start every day with a little bit of grounding so that I can be really aware of my bliss. So today, obviously, we're going to be talking about bliss. And I want to start with this. Did you know that your mind on bliss mode, which is even different than neutral mode, stress mode, negative mode, but your mind in bliss mode gives you a huge advantage in life and business. Many of you really understand about mindset, so I'm sure that you're aware of that. But I'm not just talking about positive mode. I'm talking about bliss mode. So let me define what I mean by bliss. Bliss is a deep sense of joy and contentment and the confidence that you can handle anything that comes your way. So bliss is really about emotional mastery, emotional resilience. And so why is this important? And what does this have to do with our life or business, right? Warren Buffett says, if you can't control your emotions, you can't control your money. So if in fact bliss has to do with emotional mastery and emotional resilience, you can see how this relates to Warren Buffett's world of business. But I hope you can also see how it relates to everything else we do in life, right? If you can control your emotions, and I like to say manage rather than control, but if we can manage our emotions, we're able then to make better decisions that will support the joy in our life in every area of our life, whether it's our health, right? Working out, what we eat, all of those things, relationships, business, investing. We talked a little bit about real estate, right? All of those things are going to be affected by how do we make decisions. And if we make decisions based on the filters of bliss, we're going to make decisions that are more supportive of the joy of our life. So I hope that makes sense to everybody and that feels relevant. And today, Anastasia, I actually put together something very special for this group. So this is not my normal talk. But when I visited before, I noticed how interactive all of you are and how much great wisdom there is already here about mindset and bliss and joy. And so I wanted to have a very experiential talk today rather than just talking at you. And I hope that that's okay. So I hope you'll join me and fully engage as we move into this experience of bliss. I'd like to start, and this is going to be funny because we're going to start with the unblissful piece, but I promise I will pull you out of that really fast and you will end the day feeling very blissful. But what I'd like to do is for all of us to think about something that makes us unhappy. Something that causes frustration and might cause reaction in you in a normal circumstance. So maybe it's getting cut off at work. Maybe it's thinking about the school system. Maybe it's, watching the news, right? For me, one of the examples that I like to give is if I wake up in the morning and my website has been hacked again. I don't know why this happens so much to me, but you can imagine that something like this will send my head into a complete tailspin. And in that moment, what can happen for me, and I really want you to have the experience in the same way for yourself. What can happen for me is my head would go into a tailspin and then the stories start, right? My monkey brain goes crazy. I'm like, oh my God, again, I can't believe this is happening. I hate tech. It never supports me. What am I going to do? And my mind just goes on and on and on, right? And then eventually I work myself up into tears, call my webmaster, and then he takes care of it. Still, I'm in this state of frustration, which is hard for me now to focus on the other things in life that I would like to be doing, right? And it takes me time to come back to my bliss state. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. I'd like you guys to think of something like that, that sends you into, or could possibly send you into that sort of feeling of frustration. So think about it. I want you to actually feel it. I promise we'll get you out of there, but I want you to actually feel into it. And as you're doing that, I also want you to notice what happens to your body. And we're going to talk about this in a second, but I'm just going to stop talking for a minute so you can really get into that mode. So are we all there? Yeah. So it's so interesting from my perspective to watch what happened with all of you, right? Everybody was smiling. We were all happy. And now everybody's like this, like, and notice what happens to our bodies, right? When I get frustrated, you saw what happened. My hands went to my head is down. I'm all scrunched over. My shoulders are forward. My lower back hurts, right? There's a physiology also that happens when we're feeling that level of frustration, right? So now let's switch gears and we'll talk about bliss. So what I want you to think about now is something that makes you feel very, very happy. It makes you feel good. This is going to be a bliss trigger for you. So for me, I'm really lucky. I have a bliss trigger that happens every single morning. I get my little puppy out of his crate and he's all wiggly and waggy and adorable and just wants to be cuddled. And so we get to cuddle in the morning. And one of the things that I've reminded myself, like way better than meditation, although I do meditate, but way better than meditation to put me in a specific bliss mood in the moment is just cuddling with him and feeling the joy and breathing into that joy so I can take that joy with me into my day, right? So now what I'd like you to do is just take a minute. And this one I want you to really, really feel into because I want to pull you out of that yucky feeling you just had. Think of something that really makes you feel good. This is going to be a bliss trigger for you. So something that feels yummy, that makes you feel happy and smile. And then I want you to write down a couple of trigger words for that. So for me, it would be morning with puppy. And that way, you can go back to it. So I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and let you guys think of that and then write down some trigger words. So I'm watching you guys and I'm watching people's faces change. But I'm noticing that a couple of faces haven't yet changed yet. Are we all there? Just give me a nod if you're feeling good. Susan, thank you so much for that comment. We'll get back to that later. Yes. So how are you guys feeling? Right? When you think of something that brings you joy, it happens emotionally, right? You can't help it. Our minds affect our bodies and our bodies affect our minds. So you're feeling joy. Now I want you to take a look at your bodies and what's happening there. So for me, when I think about my puppy, notice like I'm sitting up straight, my shoulders are back, I'm smiling, eyes forward, right? So much more engaged with the group. My head isn't down like this, right? So there's a complete physiological change that happens. And when you're in this bliss mode, now you can look at things from a different filter. What I want you to do is now to think back of that yucky situation we introduced earlier. Just think about that. And notice what happened for you. Did you slump over? Did you have the same reaction that you had before? Or is it different? Do you feel differently about it? And would you react differently to it? So for instance, for me in my computer hacking situation, let's say, for instance, I had this lovely moment with my puppy in the morning. I'm feeling all blissful. I wait and I go to my computer and I notice that my computer has been hacked. So now in this situation, I'd probably take a couple of deep breaths like I did with you earlier today, right? I'd feel my frustration. And then I would immediately call my webmaster and have him just handle it. Now it's off my plate. It's out of my day. It only caused a little bit of frustration, and I'm back to work without much interruption. So can you see that on bliss mode, I'm much more productive, I'm much more joyful, and I'm making better decisions? Does that make sense? Did anybody else have the same experience? I'd love to hear some feedback from you guys, maybe one or two people.
Well, I can tell you.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
I start my day quite early with exercise classes from Sloan Kettering on Zoom. And then when Zoom throws me out or freezes, it really does set my head spinning.
Yeah.
And of course, I think it's my fault, but that really does change my mode.
Yeah. And Susan, did you feel a difference when you thought about that first, and then we went into bliss mode, and then you thought about it later? What was the difference between those two ways of looking at the same situation?
Yeah. Well, when I thought about what makes me smile every morning, I smiled.
Yeah. And then how did you react to the Zoom dropping you off?
Well, let's not have it happen with you. So I won't know for a minute. Those things happen intermittently. And like you say, they happen. And it's how we perceive them. Exactly.
And we can create the filters on how we perceive them, right? If you're going to put on filters, you might as well put on filters that support your joy, don't you think?
That's a good line.
Yeah. Here's another line that I love. Actually, this is not mine. A friend of mine gave it to me. So I'm going to read it so I get it exactly right. When your mind is primed for bliss, the same challenges barely interrupt. Wait, actually, let me go back here. Your mind on bliss. I love she says this on bliss. Your mind on bliss always finds better solutions to anything that comes up than a mind without it. So anyway, so you guys have had this experience. I hope that sort of demonstrated sort of my perspective on what bliss is. And this is why I called my book Choose Bliss, because living a blissful life really is a choice. What filters you see the world through really is your choice. And you experience this right now. You could choose to just go into it in your normal reactionary mode, which is how most of us live, or you can choose to prime yourself with bliss and then go into your world in that way. Does that make sense, you guys? Great. So the next thing is that you can use your physiology for bliss. So I've given you one tool, is to create a bliss trigger, right? That's the first tool that I've given you this morning. I like to make sure that you guys have things to take away, just like Anastasia did from one of my other conversations, right? So you've got a bliss tool. I want to make sure that you actually hold on to that. So you've got some trigger words, right? What I'd like you to do is think right now of a couple other bliss moments that you can utilize. And this is why I want you to do this. You know, we've all been in business for a long time. We've all lived full lives, right? We all know that when stress happens, no matter how much training we've had, frequently stress takes over. A challenge can take over, right? In those moments, it's really hard to be like, you know what? I should be thinking blissfully, and this is what I'm going to do, right? Instead, you're starting to have that reaction. If you've got scripts already prepared and memorized, you can immediately replace the monkey brain that's happening for you with a new script that will give you joy. So that's why I like people to have prepared in their mind moments that they can now turn to and decide to live to change the filters in that moment. So what I'd like you to do is just take a minute and think about a couple more. We got one. I want to give you three because one isn't always going to do it, right? I'd like you to have three. So just think about two more moments that would give you great joy. And again, just write down some trigger words. So I'm going to be quiet. You go ahead and do that. Let me know when you guys feel like you've got a couple that you can utilize and you've written around some trigger words. Just go ahead and nod. So I'm hoping that all of you have those. I'd like you to leave this presentation today with some tools in your Bliss tool belt. So I hope you've got them, right? So that you can utilize them. But even if you don't, you've got time, right? This is a practice that you want to do for the rest of your life. And this is one other thing that I want to say about living a blissful life. It's not necessarily easy. It's a habit. It's a habit that we create. Anastasia mentioned something about, when I walk into a room, people see me as the most joyful person in the world or whatever it is, right? But the reality is I have really, really bad days too, right? Being blissful does not mean that you do not have the full range of emotions. You can go from depressed to ecstasy. We all have emotions, and those emotions are right. They teach us. We have lessons. They tell us what's going right and what's going wrong. They tell us what to aspire for. Our emotions are a really good thing. But a blissful person doesn't live in the range of emotions. They experience them, and then they come back to the core state of bliss that they can call home. Right? But living in that place is a habit. It's a habit of creating the right filters. It's a habit of training our mind. And so if you want that and you want to be able to do it consistently, you have to practice. So you need some of these tools, right? And you need to practice again and again and again. And it's not necessarily easy, and it takes time. And it's like brushing your teeth. You don't get to do it once and then have it just be over. Your teeth will all fall out, right? No, you want to make sure that you're doing this every single day to support yourself. So it's effort, right? But boy, is it worth it. If you make those habits, if you create that in your life and you make those filters, now you get to live a blissful life more over the time. You also make better decisions in your life. You also are more productive, like we talked about, right? So there's so many more advantages to living a blissful life, and it gives you that advantage in life. So now that I've given you one tool, let me give you my second favorite tool. And that is to really pay attention to your physiology. So you guys, you already have this experience, right, of walking through what a difference it makes when you're sad or upset or angry or frustrated, what happens to your body, right? For most of us, our shoulders will fall forward. We contract, right? It'll show up in different ways in our bodies. And then when you're in bliss mode, you expand, right? Naturally, like I'm doing this, this doesn't look very natural, but, but we do expand, right? And so that physiology is an indicator, first of all, of whether we're feeling blissful or not. But it can also be a leading indicator. So what I mean by that is when you're noticing that you're like, maybe you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or maybe something's starting to happen in your day and you're starting to collapse. Just do the things that you would naturally do. And it's different for everybody, right? But you had this experience before, so you're aware of what your body does. What does your body do when you're blissful? Now, position your body in that way. For me, I'll pull my shoulders back. I'll start to breathe more deeply. When I'm upset, I breathe much more shallowly. So I'll breathe more deeply. I'll put a smile on my face. No, I'm not faking the smile. But you know what? If you like put it on your face, maybe it'll become real, right? But it is definitely an indicator for me if I'm feeling good or not, is whether I'm smiling or not, right? There is actually scientific, and I'm not going to go on this tangent today, but there is scientific evidence that when you smile, all these muscles in your face react. There's actually a release of endorphins. So smiling is scientifically good. It makes you happy, right? But even just physiologically, the act of smiling tells your body, I'm happy, I'm feeling good. Right? So that physiological response, we can create the posture of bliss to then create the mood of bliss. Right? So this I'm telling you this because I want you to really understand that you have absolute control over your bliss. We can do it with our mind by using the Bliss Triggers. We can do it with our bodies. In both cases, when you get into a moment that's feeling unblissful, all you have to do is a little tweak, and suddenly your mood alters. It's a little bit like magic. And the more you do it, the more you get to experience that blissful life that will support everything that you want to do, your productivity, good decisions, good relationships, good business, good investing. Craig, that one was for you. It affects everything, right? So was that valuable? Did you guys feel like that? Those are some really yummy tools that you can use in your toolbox. Yeah. That's a lot. That's bliss for a lot of people, I have to confess. And Ashley, you guys have so much wisdom in this room. I'm really going to want to hear more about your bliss practices when we get into the Q&A. So definitely keep those in mind, because I'd love to share. Susan shared about laughter in the morning, and then Tony about bacon. I love bacon. So anyway, so we're going to talk about that. We need to wrap up, unfortunately, because I don't have a huge amount of time. There are two more practices that I want to share with you. And one is in the form of a gift, and one I will give to you today because it's very quick. But the golden ticket, the master key to bliss is gratitude. It turns out that your bliss is directly related to your gratitude and how much time you spend in gratitude. This topic is so important that I wrote a full chapter of it in my book, Choose Bliss. And it's a deep concept. It's not just thank you, although that is good, right? That's a great place to start. But there are ways to do it that actually really, really enhance your bliss. And the interesting thing about gratitude is you can do it wrong, in that some people will do gratitude practices where they're actually avoiding lack. So they say it in a way that makes them scared to lose it, whatever it is that they're grateful for, right? You don't want to be doing a gratitude practice that causes fear. And so in my chapter, I talk about the right way to do a gratitude practice. And since I don't have the time to go over it right now, I'd like to give that to you as a gift. Would you guys like that? Okay, great. So what we're going to do is, so Anastasia, go ahead and put that link in the chat. It's coreblisslife.com/survey. So I have a little appreciation form for you guys to give me feedback on. Don't worry if you don't want to fill these forms out. Don't worry about it. You could just go down to the bottom and say, yes, I want your gift, and give me your email address, and that'll be fine. If you do feel like giving me feedback, I would be honored to hear your thoughts. I respect all of you in this room and would love to hear from you. But if you would rather not do that, go to the form, get your free gift, put in the email address, and then use the next couple of minutes while people are filling out the form to write down some practices that you personally do to achieve bliss in your life, or maybe write down some things that you're going to use from this presentation going forward in your life. So I'm going to be quiet for just a minute. The website again is coreblisslife.com/survey. Go ahead and pull that up, and I'll give you a couple minutes to just fill that out. Was that enough time, you guys? I don't want it to be like a huge amount of time. Or is everybody back? Great. Thank you for those of you who filled out the form. And for those of you that want the chapter, I will get that out to you as soon as I can. Anyway, so as I promised you, I've got an extra credit strategy that I want to give you before we open up the floor for Q&A and your comments. So here's my extra credit strategy. It is called Stop, Drop, and Breathe. This is my favorite one because it's quick and easy, and you can do it anywhere, anytime, with anyone, and it's super, super effective. So this is how this works. Imagine that you're in that yucky moment. For me, it was like my computer got hacked, right? And I start to notice the monkey mind is going. Understand that a situation does not cause a reaction. The story in your head about the situation causes the reaction. So what you want to do is you catch, oh my gosh, there's this story starting to happen in my mind, right? I'm starting to slump. I'm starting to have a reaction. So first you stop. For me, quite literally, if I'm in my office, I will say, Moneeka, stop. If I'm in a grocery store or in public, I might snap. I have some sort of trigger to stop the monkey mind. Now, take your mind and drop it down into your heart. Literally remove it and take it into your heart. That's the drop. And now take 3 deep breaths in through your nose. Have that breath go all the way down so it's tickling the back of your belly button. And then breathe out through your mouth. That's an energizing breath. And you want to do 3 of those. Or as many as you can do, right? If you can only do 1, you just do 1. But now notice my voice has dropped. My frustration is gone, right? Now you're in a place to be able to respond again from a filter of bliss, right? So use this all the time. I will say this. This is my favorite strategy because I use it the most, right? Because you can use it in a second. You don't need to engage your brain. You just engage your body, which is actually significantly easier, right? But this one actually is a little bit of a challenge in the beginning because a lot of people can't get the breath. We can't stop the brain, the monkey mind. We can't get the breath, right? But if you practice it, don't give up on it if it doesn't work the first time. If you practice it 6 or 7 times in, you'll start to notice, oh yeah, that's easier. Like I said, all these bliss practices take a little bit of practice, but they're totally worth it. This one's the easiest one to get access to immediately. So it's really been an honor to chat with you today and to spend time with you. And I hope that the experiences and the tools that I gave you today were valuable and will help you to live a more blissful life. And I know there's a lot of wisdom in this room, so I'd like to hear from you. What is it that you do to create bliss in your life? Or what is it that you loved that you think you will take forward into your life, starting right after this meeting to create more bliss in your life? Would anybody like to share? Anastasia, go ahead. And of course, if you have questions for me, please feel free to ask.
Oh, okay. So first off, just real quick, I want to go back to that exercise that you had us do because I'm fully aware of the whole body posture, like literally I've tested it on myself, just slumping and how do I feel right now versus being up and aware, and it literally changes how I feel. But this idea of having a trigger that I can go, a positive trigger, a bliss trigger that I can go to, not only to get me out of the space that I'm in. So like in my case, I was thinking of wildfires. That's what gets me like I was very upset yesterday over what's happening in Arizona because I have friends there. And bringing back all the stuff that happened in the Bay Area and our families, that brought me down. And then the things I was thinking about was my grandchildren and being with my family and my 60th birthday and the tea and the croquet and like all this stuff. I could envision me and my family and my granddaughters at that party and how much joy that brought me and bliss. But then to go back to the wildfires, I did find in my body the differences. So when I was thinking about the frustration, the sadness, the anger, all of that, the fear, my chest tightens. Then we go to the happiness, right? And I'm feeling more free, like I can breathe better. And then when you had us come back, my chest didn't tighten as much. I could feel the sadness again over the wildfires, but it didn't physically affect me as much as it had after I had been in that state of bliss. So I can really see how even without, I feel like prophylactically, I should be thinking about this on a regular basis as a protection, like a Pepto-Bismol coating on my stomach that if I just, drink it every day, it's going to help make it easier for me to not go into that space. So that was a really interesting experiment for you to have us do. So I appreciate that. And I want to bring back this thing that you had talked about on Hal Elrod's show that I literally use all the time. And that is similar to your stop, drop, and breathe, but to stop and call myself out with the Anastasia, are these thoughts serving you? Because I don't know about everybody else, but I mean, my monkey brain, okay, goes down in different directions. And how many of us have had dialogue, negative dialogue with somebody, an argument with someone that you are imagining in your head that hasn't even happened, may not ever happen, but I'll even go through various iterations of it. Like it didn't quite turn out the way I wanted. So then I'll change my argument with this person to another argument and then another argument. And next thing I know, I'm spinning myself. And then I have to stop and think, holy Toledo, this hasn't even happened. I'm all upset, usually in the shower too. I'm upset. I'm angry at this person. I'm angry at my inability to get them to see things from my viewpoint. And then I realized it is so far from reality. And so I have to stop myself. And then I literally will say, Anastasia, are these thoughts serving you? Mm. And it just brings me dead in my tracks. And I have no choice but to shift. And I usually laugh at how ridiculous I am. And sometimes it's harder to get out of that. But I will say that it really serves me. In fact, I've got a new monitor now, but I got to do this again. I had a label right at the top of my monitor that said, Anastasia, ... are these thoughts serving you? As a visual reminder to stop myself. And it ties into that, Viktor Frankl is, if there's one person that I can most understand what he's talking about when we have choice, that man has shared with us about choice. Mm-hmm. And it's powerful, and I reflect back and I imagine myself in a concentration camp in his situation and having choice as to how you feel. They can take everything away from you, but they cannot take away your choice for how you feel. And your statement that reminds me to stop, and are these thoughts serving me, brings me back to choice. And I just want to thank you for that. So.
Oh, thank you, Anastasia. Yeah, thank you. Do you guys mind if I make some comments on that? That was so beautifully said. So Anastasia made a really, really good point in that our bliss triggers, they can be primers for your day, right? They can also be the cure for a fall from bliss. So you can use them on the front end and the back end. And I recommend that you do, because you always want to start your day like that, right? Blissed out. your brain on bliss. And then you can also use it as a cure later. So thank you for saying that. I meant to say that in my presentation, and I'm so glad that you caught that, Anastasia. And the other thing that I really want to say is that people think that life has to be complicated, and that if it's not complicated, it's not good. Like if a strategy isn't complicated, it's not good enough for me, right? It's not scientifically proven, whatever it is. I like very, very simple strategies, because it's those simple strategies that you can implement immediately in a moment that can change everything. So I love the one that you mentioned. I love these very, very simple strategies. One other thing that I wanted to mention is, we just got out of a pandemic, and we're dealing with the war in Ukraine, and there's all sorts of stuff that we hear about in the news. And those things cause stress in our bodies and our minds. How much stress is going to be determined by us? We can't change the school system by ourselves. We can't change what's going on in politics. We can't change what's happening outside of us. But we always have control of what's going on inside of us. And so just remember that. I love that, Anastasia, about choice. They can take everything, but they can't take your choice. So thank you so much for that. Does anybody else want to give us something that they use to create bliss in their lives? Susan, and then we'll go to Craig.
I don't know if any of you remember the photographer Ann Geddes, who did the baby pictures, and she put the babies in the flowers. And by the way, for all of you who have grandchildren, I love seeing baby pictures.
Oh, yes.
But I've gotten to the point, they start my day, whatever is happening, if I have a friend sends me a video of his grandson or granddaughter, I stop and I actually watch it. And by the way, if they don't send me, I then send them notes going, I haven't seen a picture that's cruel to you. Better send me some. So I think the Ann Geddes idea of these pictures of these babies and smiling. I don't care about pets. You don't send me anything with a pet. But I think it's that the little infants doing just wonderful things. But I would jump on what Anastasia said. I do the same thing. I have these great conversations in my head. I was told there's a psychological term for it. It's called catastrophizing, to which one friend, when she asked me why I didn't write fiction, I said, I don't have that great of imagination. She said, are you kidding? That story just told me you have more imagination than anyone I know. So I think we kind of make things up, but also nature. I mean, as I am sitting here, I look out over across to the mountains in Marin, and I just see trees. And there's something about that. That's why I don't spend a lot of time in my formal office if I see trees. I think bliss is something that is a choice, and certainly Viktor Frankl and many survivors of so many horrible things have said that they make choices. They also make some other kinds of payments, but I really thank you for this, because it's a good reminder that if I know I need to start my day with humor, not to shortchange myself on seeing things that laugh. Thank you.
I love that, Susan. Thank you. And then Craig, and then Christine.
Well, I was going to say something about choice, like similar to Anastasia. I just finished reading Viktor Frankl's book. So that was, it's all about choice and the choices we make. And I like that your trick idea. I think it's always good to have a bag of tricks. I find just for me, just whatever I'm grateful for. If I feel a little anxious or something, you just feel what I'm grateful for. And then I think it's important to have a daily trigger. For a great example of this is just seeing Randall Reeder in his truck with his farm hat and his shirt. That gives me great joy and bliss. And I'm gonna retain this image for the rest of my day. So thank you, Randall. And then also the posture thing. Tana Hope has so much to say about that. Our wellness and hope expert. So Tana taught us about that. And then if all else fails, in my kitchen, I have a red box that's the glass cover on it and a piece of bacon in there. And it says, if all else fails, go for it.
Eat bacon.
That's all I have for you.
Craig, that was awesome. Thank you. Christine, what would you like to share?
Well, I want to confirm what you're saying. Everyone's mentioning Viktor Frankl. He actually was one of my professors in a couple of classes. And
Wow.
So I had a unique experience. But it's when I was en route to my master's and doctorate in psychology that I got along the way. And it's an inspiration. I've had some amazing professors, and that was one of them. And so I totally understand and appreciate your learning from what he has written as well. But being there in person with him was truly a unique experience as well. And your being here in person and not virtually for us today is also a very, very special experience, because it also makes me call to mind things that have made my life special. And music has certainly been one of them. I've learned and performed music all over the world in many, 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 many languages. Not always, or not typically in my case. At one time it was for money or for when I was a student and that sort of thing. But a lot of times it was sharing. And I found that music in people's lives and hearts can really be a trigger to good memories and positive things, not so much as a performance, but if shared back with them with the correct pronunciation of their languages and things they learned as children, things that are not children's baby song, but messages and things that mattered to them. That has been one of the things that I've been able to give back, and that goes back and forth to watch the joy and the specialness of things that were musical that people learned in a positive context, if shared back with them in a way that is respectful of the languages and the cultures, not destroying them by not properly saying them or understanding what the message is. So that's been one of the things that I have found has been very effective kind of interchange and reciprocal with people I've met all over the world.
You know, Christine, you bring to mind, first of all, thank you for that. You bring to mind this idea of the giver's high and being of service. Even in enjoying music, the way you talked about it was in service to the audience that's hearing, not mutilating their language. Service is another one of the chapters in my book. It's a huge pillar of bliss, because when we get out of ourselves and we're taking into account somebody else, we now have something so much bigger than ourselves to be paying attention to. And being of service to others in all different ways, whether it's speaking their language correctly, whether it's just smiling at them, holding a door for them, or contributing, right, financially or with our time. Those things all give us a server's high. I actually could talk about that for 2,000 years. Like, I love that. But there's so many things that prove that if we go and do things in service. So music has been clinically proven to improve people's moods. It can be a trigger and an anchor as a sound, right? And then also adding that in, Christine, in this sort of this attitude of service was just beautiful. I've never quite heard it that way. So thank you.
Thanks. Just one little additional thing that I have found that I've been very good with. I think I was a parrot in the past life. I can repeat things correctly, but it's the context also, and the message of people's music, especially things that they started out with as young, something that's special, and it's respectful, and it's something that they appreciate. And,
yeah, I love that.
I've done my time for it. Anyway.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add, or any questions they've got?
I think I want to go off of Susan's thing about babies. You know, the one thing, no matter where I hear or whatever, baby giggles, just babies laughing just brings a smile to my face. It's just a purity of joy, I think, with babies having fun. So.
I love that, Tony. You know, I at night, I have my Instagram account up on my phone. My husband just laughs at me. And everything on Instagram for me is about animals. So I love elephants. I love lions. I love the majesty of them. And I love ducks. And so I scroll and I see all these reels about all these animals, and it just sends me off into this blissful sleep. You're not supposed to have screen time just before you go to sleep. But I found, like, what are you supposed to do and what actually works for you, right? For me, this really works to send me into my sleep smiling. And then I wake up much more naturally on the right side of the bed. I'm much more happy when I wake up, usually, if I do that. So I love that. Children's giggles, for me, it's animals. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? I hope you guys found this talk valuable and that you enjoyed it.
I think it was excellent. Thank you for joining us, Moneeka, and for your talk. Everybody give her a big round of applause. Jazz, all right. It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.